What's up, everybody? I got to come up with some sort of new intro in regards to starting these episodes, but for now this works because it's the Energy is Love podcast. It is January 30th. I don't remember. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what day it is, but you are about to listen to the podcast for the universe. Go find all of our episodes online, energieslovepodcast.com, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, iTunes, Google Play, YouTube, anywhere and everywhere. The podcast keeps growing, which we are eternally grateful for. Thank you so much, everybody, for supporting and doing all of that fun jazz. This wonderful episode of the podcast you are about to listen to is brought to you by our wonderful sponsor, As Above, So Below. As Above, So Below is located in Roy, Utah. So if you are one of our listeners, one of our many listeners here in Utah, head up north and go to Roy, swing by Roy, pop into As Above, So Below, and tell them that you heard about them on the podcast for the universe. At As Above, So Below, you're going to find tons of wonderful things for your spiritual journey, for the whole metaphysical aspect of your life. Anything and everything that you could possibly imagine, you're going to be able to find there. As Above, So Below also hosts classes and events on a regular basis. Coming up in February, they've got tons of things going on that are happening. There's almost too many for me to list and name. So go to our website, click on sponsors. You'll find the link there to As Above, So Below, which will take you to their Facebook page where you can find all of their events. Keep up to date by liking their page, following them on Facebook, and then you'll be able to see all the things that they do and host and put on. It's a wonderful shop. We can't say enough about As Above, So Below. They've been a wonderful sponsor of the podcast, so go show them some love. Check them out. I think this, if I'm not mistaken, I'm fairly certain this was the first interview we did with somebody from Hawaii. So we do have some listeners in Hawaii. It's one of those areas that's growing in regards to listenership for the podcast. But I got the opportunity to speak with Ameera Beth. So in this interview, in this conversation, during this episode, me and Ameera talked about so many different wonderful things. We learned a little bit about her spiritual journey, her experiences, and what she went through in life. But then we also dived into sacred geometry. So that has come up on the podcast a couple of times, and during this episode, we learned a lot more. Ameera did a wonderful job of explaining sacred geometry, describing it, all those kind of different things. So if you're interested at all in regards to this, you're going to learn something during this episode. Ameera also talked about wisdom wear. So she's got a company where they create crystal infused clothing. So they take a variety of crystals, amethyst, smoky quartz, rose quartz, a bunch of different things, grind them into an incredibly fine powder, and then infuse that into the ink that they use to create t-shirts and clothing and all these different things. And all the clothing has very specific sacred geometric shapes on them, including Metatron's cube, the flower of life, anything you could think of. So she talked a lot about that as well. It was a really interesting interview. I loved getting to chat with Ameera. Go check her stuff out at wisdomware.org. You can also follow all the links to all the other things that she's got going on. But now sit back and relax and enjoy this wonderful episode of the podcast for the universe. Here we go.
You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is the Love podcast.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Energy is love.
The Energy is Love podcast.
The podcast for the universe.
The Energy is Love podcast.
Well, good morning, Ameera.
Good morning. Aloha.
Thank you for taking the time to be on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. I'm really excited about today. Thanks so much for asking me.
I think, if I'm not mistaken, you're the first person that we've interviewed that's from Hawaii, or at least lives in Hawaii.
I am on the beautiful island of Kauai.
And how long have you lived there?
I moved here a year ago this month from the Portland, Oregon area.
So it's a little bit different, obviously.
Yeah, it is. I started coming back and forth from Portland, bringing people to the island for retreats a few years ago, and just decided on one visit that I didn't want to go back anymore.
So you must really, really enjoy it then.
I absolutely love it here. It is paradise. This is the heart of Lemuria. It's a magical 5D island where all things are possible. And of course, all things are possible all of the time. But for some reason, it feels like on Kauai, there's some kind of extra special ancient magic and mysticism that is, Lemuria. that just allows for a deepening and a quickening of dreams and passions and evolution to happen very fast. That's what I'm finding anyway.
I've heard that before about people that have visited and gone before, and they talk about the energy that's there and things like that. And I've also heard that same thing in regards to Lemuria and Hawaii and the islands kind of being a, let's see if I can remember, like if we think about the crystal grid of the planet, it having some key component there on the islands in regards to that.
Yes, people come here and get a huge activation. First-time visitors especially will come here, and they, the first time I visited, I really had no idea what I was stepping into as far as how my soul felt being on this land, because there is something very ancient and primal and magical about the island of Kauai, which, and all the Hawaiian islands are wonderful. They all have a beautiful energy, specific energy and vibration. Kauai happens to be the crown and third eye of all the islands. All the islands represent a chakra. So the energy here moves very, very fast, often faster than our physical bodies for a little while are able to, to kind of jive with. But once you get into the flow here and you match your physical vibration to what's happening to you spiritually, it's quite fantastic.
I bet. I can imagine. It's definitely on my list of places that we're going to visit one day.
Awesome. You really should.
So let's go back a little bit, because I want to learn more about you before we get diving into wisdomware and all the things that you're doing with that. Because honestly, that's really, really exciting stuff, and it's super cool, and I'm excited to talk to you about it.
I'm excited to talk about it. Geometry is my life, it seems.
But I want to learn a little bit more about you first.
Okay.
And so I always like learning how people come to spirituality, come to energy work, come to kind of the realm of all these different things. Because I have met through the podcast and just in regular everyday life, some people that are kind of born and raised and brought up in the space of, believing and working with energy and things like that. And of course, everybody has the ability to go back and remember things from their childhood and from their pasts and ways that they've always been connected. But I think there's a big difference from having that awareness of the connection throughout your whole life, but then really stepping in and embracing it.
Yeah. Well, for me, it was kind of the opposite. I had no awareness until about 12 years ago. I was really what we would call asleep and struggling in the world with a lot of different dynamics in my life, money dynamics, relationship dynamics, career dynamics, all these things that we go through as human. And really, was always drawn to the metaphysical, read a couple books here and there, went and saw some energy healers and psychic healers, but was really kind of still stuck, I guess, in this paradigm of 3D and moving through life, really having no idea what my soul purpose was and what I was really here to do, just thinking I was going to be a wife and a mother. I had a young family at the time of my awakening and was going to live in suburbia and drive a minivan and just was really enmeshed in really intense 3D living. And, over the years, I went and saw a healer, very good friend of mine named Amy Mace Farman, who became my mentor eventually. And I would go see her for different readings and energy work and things like that. And she would teach me things, and some of them I would kind of get, and some of them I'd be like, I just don't understand that. And eventually, over time, one day in late December, I was watching an Oprah Winfrey show in December of 2004. And I was watching this show on Oprah, and she had women on her program from all over the world who had, and what their life was like. They're all 30 years old, and I was around that age at that time. So she was interviewing these women, and some of them had lives that were really similar to mine, but most of them were very, very different. like the woman who lived through the atrocities in Rwanda, and these women from these Middle Eastern countries, who were so polar opposite of what my suburban life was like. But I found watching that program, something happened and was activated within me. And I felt myself connecting to the eyes and to the soul of all those women, no matter how alike or how different they were for me. And I just bawled the entire program. And I'd never had anything like that happen to me before. I didn't know what was happening, and I didn't realize that that was a big catalyst to my awakening. So I couldn't get that program out of my mind for days. I was just really kind of an emotional wreck over it and really had no idea why. So in early January of 2005, I went back to my friend Amy, and I sat down in front of her and I just sobbed. And I said, I don't know what's happening to me. I watched this program on Oprah. I started reading this book by Dr. Wayne Dyer, and I'm freaking out because all this emotion, all these feelings are coming up inside of me, and I don't know what to do with myself. What's going on? And she looks at me very calmly and she says, well, congratulations. You've woken up. I've been waiting years for this. And I looked at her and I said, I don't like it. Put me back to sleep. And she went, nope. Sorry, doesn't work like that. Once you have an awakening, there's no turning back. And so she guided me through in that session, gave me a list of books to read, kind of laid out the next few years of my life about where I would be moving, what I would be doing, the things I would be growing into, and really kind of gave me a push start out into the world with all this information that I really was here to be more than a wife and a mother and live in suburbia, that I was here to help people and help this planet through ascension and raising the collective vibration. And I really didn't even know what that meant at the time, but I trusted her. She'd helped me for a lot of years, given me a lot of great help. And now suddenly she was helping me. I was learning this whole nother level of growth. So that was kind of the catalyst for me to start reading, learning, growing, doing all the things we do when we have our spiritual awakening, to try and figure out what the heck, what are we doing and why are we here? What am I to do with this, God?
Were you at a point in your life during that time period where you were feeling kind of stuck, or there was a lot of great turmoil and strife going on?
I would say that I had off and on in my life had a lot of drama, just, relationship drama and emotional drama, and just the things we kind of conjure up through our creative experience as being humans when we're not conscious of our thoughts and our actions. When we want to blame other people for our patterns, and we want to, look outside ourselves for validation. I had definitely gone through most of my life in that mode. And looking back after I had that awakening moment, and as I went through my more of my process of awakening, looking back, I saw Spirit really trying to wake me up for years. The little shoulder taps and the things to help me, to guide me and to move me out of that paradigm. And it really took a while for it to take.
Yeah.
And when it did, it was quite dramatic. Like, I literally changed my life 180 degrees and went this other direction of self-exploration and active healing and learning. And really wanting, feeling purposeful for the first time in my life, really feeling like, oh my God, I have a purpose. Let's go find out what that is. And off I went.
So I have a question. Well, I've got a lot of questions to ask, but one of the questions that's popping into my head, was there some in the process of waking up and learning and just grabbing a hold of any information that you possibly could, whether it's through books or whatever the case may be, was there some aspect of, and when I say spirituality, I just kind of just a broad term that kind of gathers together all of these different things, right? Was there some aspect of spirituality that you really felt drawn to initially, that you really kind of connected and resonated with?
Oh, all of it. All of it. I literally became a sponge. I read in the first 2-3 years after that, I read hundreds of books on every spiritual topic, every religious topic, every ancient history topic I could get my hands on. I did the things that I think a lot of people do in the beginning. I bought some Oracle and Tarot cards, learned to use them. I did Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, went through that book. And I really just embraced all of it. And past life regression therapy ultimately has become the medium through which I do most of my help out of the world through, taking people into other realms and doing shamanic journeys with people through hypnosis and regression therapy to help them discover more about their own soul purpose and realm and go heal these other aspects of ourselves that we are multidimensionally connected to and really are looking to us in this time and place and this earth experience to help the totality of our soul. And I can tell you a little bit more about that too, if that interests you.
Well, all of this stuff interests me. That's the fun thing, is to get to talk with cool people that have all these insights. And the neat thing is I always like to get, I think at the end of the day, everybody has, it's no different than any other topic out there. It's you have your own spin, your own interpretation, the way that you resonate and connect with it. And right. So I always like learning about other people's, because then it helps me in the space of how I connect and how I learn and how I look at, all these different dynamic topics and things like that. But of course I want to learn, or I want to know more about past life regressions. So I've had experiences like that. I've gone through those types of journeys, or whatever we want to call them. And I have a very, very, I'm trying to think I don't know if I want to choose a really strong word, but I have a very different take, I suppose, when it comes to past lives. But I want to know about yours first, and then we can kind of debate a little bit.
As do I. In my understanding, there really is no such thing. I mean, there's no past, present, and future.
Beautiful.
Everything happens at once. So when we say past life, which is a term that our conscious mind, our human mind, can wrap itself around that concept, we really, it's a multidimensional or a simultaneous life. Everything, all lifetimes are happening at once. So when we go into another lifetime or a simultaneous lifetime, you're going into another version or aspect of yourself that has a happening maybe similar to the happening you've got going on, in this earthly experience at the same time. And I call that kind of like a bleed through of that aspect of your being that is actively seeking you out on this timeline because it knows that you can help them. Through regression therapy, through shamanic journeying, through meditation, and through this process that we're all moving through called ascension. So because we are multidimensional beings, it's becoming very clear and very easy for us now to connect with these other aspects of our being and know that, we're so much more than these 5 sensory 3D beings that show up on planet Earth here in 2017.
So what were some of the things because that whole concept and idea that we're multidimensional beings that exist across space and time in different dimensions, all these different realms, all those kind of concepts and ideas, that's initially, unless you have had some experience or some insight, somebody just telling you that, like if there's somebody that's out there that's listening to the podcast and they're thinking, what the hell are these people talking about?
Right.
So how did you make the leap, or what was it that helped you in the space of really understanding that and connecting with that so that you could embrace it more?
Early in my awakening, I was meditating. I think it was maybe September of 2005. I was in meditation and my arms started to move on their own. Like literally my arms rose up around me and started creating these like flowy, spirally, swimmy like motions in front of me on their own, independent of my free will. And when that started to happen, I didn't know what that was. I thought maybe there was angels playing with my arms. I didn't know. All I did know is it felt wonderful. It felt really good. But again, I was like, what the heck is happening with me? What's going on? And I soon realized that energy could move through my entire body. That if I yielded to the energy, it would move through me And I would just, move and sway and writhe and rise and fall throughout my whole body with this energy. And then I realized that my hands would try to gravitate towards people around their energy centers, around their chakras, and create these spiral spinny motions. And I started to heal my partner's headaches and put him to sleep when he couldn't sleep, and then work on my children and kind of ease the energy field around them. And again, this is something moving through me, which I still didn't know what it was. So I went and had a past life regression done with a woman named Julia Ingram, who would later become my mentor and trainer for past life regression therapy. And when I was on the couch and went down into the hypnosis, I use hypnosis for past life regression, I started to jump up and down on the couch with my arms over my head, exclaiming that I'm a mermaid. I found myself in the water, swimming down towards the depths of the ocean, and I saw Atlantis. So, of course, the part of me that tries to be rational is thinking through this experience, this can't be true. What the heck is going on here? But the part of me that was so in the experience and being supported by her, just wanting to know more, realized that this was an aspect of my being that was coming through time and space, whatever, however we want to imagine that, and moving into my body, through my body, and helping me to explore who I was becoming as a healer and a teacher and a soul on this planet.
Have you had subsequent experiences like that?
Oh, constantly. It's with me all the time. It never leaves. And if I just yield to it, it is the energy, my mer self, whose name is Ameera. I took her name several years ago. She comes through the mer world to work through me during my sessions. She holds the wisdom. She holds the energy field that moves through me, and I get to have the body. So it's kind of like she's there with me, but there's an agreement that I get to be human and I get to have all my human experiences. And when I need to call her forth, I mean, she's always right there with me. And I can utilize our gifts because she is me in another realm, of course, get to utilize her wisdom and her gifts to do all my healing work.
Have you had any connection with other lives or other experiences outside of, the bond between you and her?
I have been into many, many past lives, of course, many other lifetimes, but there is nothing, I don't have any other lifetimes that I'm aware of or existences that I'm aware of that are quite as potent or important to me or affect me in the way that this one does. The rest of them are just kind of like fun to know.
Yeah.
And maybe picking up, oh, I used to do this in another lifetime. I can remember how to do that here. But this is an agreement that we have together. It's as if she is more than sister, twin to my soul. She is my soul essence. So being her, and again, it sounds almost like there's like some kind of a takeover or something happening, and it's not like that at all. It's just an energetic field I can call on 24/7 that helps me do all these wonderful things that I'm trying to do out in the world today.
Well, I totally agree with you in regards to there not being a past life. And that's always a sticking point for me when I talk with people or when I'm trying to explain something to somebody, because I very much, there's no past, there's no future. It's just all about the now. And so when I would have my own experiences that would typically be described as a past life, I would get information, or I would gain insight or have some connection or correlation, but then I would really stay stuck in the space of like, well, that doesn't make sense that it's in the past, or that, I had this past life experience, as whatever the case may be. Now it just didn't fit and work for me. But one of the neat things for me personally, and maybe you'll agree with me, is I always think that whenever you connect up and kind of sync with that energy wherever it's at, I think that they're gaining just as much information and insight from
absolutely
your current, who you are now,
Yeah.
And that's the neat part when I get kind of lost in that space of like, oh, that was such a cool experience for me. And I got so much information. Or a lot of times, sometimes it's, it's just a good feeling that you gain from it. You might not necessarily walk away having some new skill set or insight or deeper understanding. You just feel good.
Yeah. Well, and it's you helping yourself.
Yeah.
And because we are all our own best healers, what regression therapy allows us to do through the hypnosis is to go in and access our own higher self and our own information. I simply hold space for the event to take place, ask open-ended questions, and help people to go deeper into their own experience. So it's different than when you have an intuitive maybe talk to you about a past life or tell you about it. That can be helpful, but it's not nearly as helpful as allowing a person to go in and experience their self as that being, know what that being was feeling, what were they going through, what do they need, and letting them have a conversation even between the two of them about how can I help you, how can you help me? And we heal multidimensional in that way because we integrate or understand our multidimensional. We're so vast and expansive and multidimensional. And when you connect somebody directly into that knowingness, I mean, just even having that conscious experience raises people up. It's like, oh, that's how it works. Now I get it.
I think we need to, like me personally, I need to sit down and come up with a whole new, not a new way, but I think we have to do away with labeling them past lives. And I know that it's an easy way to explain to somebody and have them connect with it and understand it on some level. But I also think it's a disservice because we're speaking of the past. And so I think we have to come up with some new word or term or description to describe that connection and that correlation with the energy that exists somewhere out there.
Yeah, and I've like, okay, do we call it simultaneous life? Multidimensional healing? Like all those terms are kind of out there. Mm-hmm. I haven't really found like the right wording or the right label, I guess, to speak it and have people instantly know what I'm talking about. So I've kind of kept with past life regression therapy, but then explained this is really what we're doing. This is really what it is. But the past life, that draws people in because their conscious mind goes, oh, okay, I have an idea of what that could mean. But then you take them deeper in their understanding and knowledge. And I actually teach past life regression facilitation. I teach groups of people to become healers through past life regression therapy and hypnosis. And so when I teach my people, my students about this concept, I also explain to them that Archangel Metatron explained to me. He explained to me something very simple on how we can understand what that higher self or the idea of a higher self, what that means. Because we hear that, but we don't always really know what does that look like? Like, our left brain always needs to like figure things out and like have something tangible about that.
Yeah, we got to put it in a box and make it small.
Well, yeah, exactly. And not so abstract. So what he asked me to explain to people is to envision your higher self like a sun. So it's just envision like the sun would be your high self. And just like the sun sends out rays of light, many, many streams and rays of light down to Earth and really down into other realities and dimensions too, maybe even outside of our galaxy. The sun sends out these rays of light, and our higher self, because it's so large, because your entire higher self could not show up on planet Earth as you in its totality, it sends rays or extensions of itself out to other realms, universes, planets, and realities. It's got to split itself up, just like the sun does, because of the immensity of the light it holds, and because it desires to have a multitude of experiences. Thousands, maybe millions. I don't even know. So if you can picture your higher self like a sun and rays of you or extensions of you coming into all these different realities simultaneously, that kind of helps like the left brain wrap itself around what that means or what that could be like. It makes sense.
It's a good description. I like it.
Yeah. It's a really simplified. I mean, it's an oversimplified, but I mean, if you can't make it simple, what's the point? It doesn't have to be complicated, right? So, and he also explained to me that, we're going through ascension now on this earth realm. Some of our other aspects when we die in that last time, or when we make our transition, pass with unfinished business or stay earthbound. We call those earthbound spirits. Or maybe they stay bound to the realm that they were in because of something that happened, usually during the death experience, that doesn't allow that ray of light or that aspect of yourself to return back up to the Godhead. Because its business is not finished. So another benefit to regression therapy is that as we heal, go into these other aspects of ourselves, and I believe they seek us out. I believe they bug us and poke us and affect our lives enough because they know, hey, you're on Earth in 2017. You can go see Ameera. You can go help us all. Or you can go find this shamanic healer, and you can help a whole bunch of us at once, because that's what, that's the level of consciousness you people are at this earth. This is what you're doing. So as we heal those other aspects of ourselves, find out what's unresolved, find out what needs to be healed, they get to then leave from whatever place or realm they're stuck in and go back up to the Godhead, go back up to your higher self. And what that enables us to do, because there's less coming out, more going back, this line of time or this extension or ray that we are on gets stronger. And that's what we call ascension. And this is how we are holding more light. By self-healing ourselves, healing ourselves in all these dimensions and realities, those get to go back up to the higher self, which transfer back up to the Godhead as complete. We've done our job. The rest of the rays, including the one we are on here, get stronger. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I'm just sitting here thinking and pondering that this is the fun part for me, as I get to sit and learn other things and think about other things. So I think that, what you say does make sense, and I agree with you. But I also think that, a lot of times we get stuck in that space of thinking that we need to heal, or that we're going to heal a past life, or that's why we have those experiences or those memories or those remembrances or those connections, whatever we want to call it, because some aspect of our energy or our soul in some other realm or dimension is struggling and needs to heal. And once we can heal all these pieces, or, that's the whole concept and idea behind kind of karma and reincarnation and things like that, where you're going to come back to continually heal your karma and get to that point where you can, no longer have that connection or that baggage from the experiences that you've gone through in life.
Right.
But I don't necessarily think we have to heal anything. I think that there's nothing wrong with any of us at any given point on the whole spectrum and spin of all the pieces that we are throughout the universe. I think that, for me personally, I think that the reason we have all of these experiences is they create energy, which helps then continue the spin of whatever big grand picture of things that we can't understand with our small minds.
Yeah. And, from a higher perspective, you're totally right. But when you take a person who is suffering because they have a pattern in their life they can't seem to break free from and don't know why, and it's helping them from feeling joy in their life, and you give them an experience where they can go find out why that happened or where that originated from and change that, that's all that matters. Even if we aren't quite ready to go yet, well, we really don't need to heal. The people who are suffering feel like they need to heal. And this is a modality to help them cross that bridge.
It gets so convoluted when you start and, kind of trying to, pick apart and understand and decipher all the different nuances that exist. And that's the fun part, though. That's the part that I really like.
Yeah, and I think we're getting closer to an era where we hold that deeper understanding that we're all divine, it's all perfect. And there was never, that suffering is something we invented, we were never meant to suffer. I think we're getting closer to again, really being able to hold that as the ultimate reality, but until then, we have some different things that we can do for ourselves that help us cross that bridge. and grow. And most of all, help us back into our joy, help us back into creative mode and feeling good in our human bodies.
So we'll segue so that we don't get lost in the spin of that conversation. Not that it's not a wonderful conversation, but there's so much that we could dive into. So
yeah.
You mentioned a little bit about Metatron.
Yes.
I know who Metatron is. I have correlation and connection with Metatron and Metatron's cube and everything like that.
I see that by your logo.
Yes. But tell somebody out there who may not understand who the heck you're talking about or what you're talking about.
About who Metatron is?
Yes.
Okay. So Metatron was the prophet Enoch in the Bible. He was in the Old Testament as the prophet Enoch. And he is known as a man who was so righteous that when he had died, he ascended into heaven and God instantly made him an archangel. Most of the archangels were always archangels. They were never human. Metatron is one of a couple who led a human life. And then he was given the title, I guess, or the upgrade of becoming an archangel. And he sits at the right hand throne of God, and he is known as the voice of God.
So when you think about that, do you take that literally? Like, first off, I guess we should go back a little bit, or I should go back and understand a little bit more about you. Do you have connection and correlation with Christianity and the teachings of Christianity?
Well, I was raised Catholic.
So a little bit then.
So yeah, so I have a little bit. We never delved. The Catholics acknowledge the angels and the archangels. That's a part of the Catholic teachings. But it was never something that my family or my church, when I was younger, really impressed upon me as important. To really know who Archangel Michael was, to know who Archangel Gabriel was. You read about them in the Bible, but it was never really, go in deeply and connect with these angels and archangels. So that didn't happen for me until after my awakening, until you start reading and learning about all these beings who are from the angelic realm who are here to assist us. So I didn't come in with any of that knowledge. And I really didn't even know very much about Metatron because up until I think recently, he's been kind of an esoteric guy. He's been one of the few archangels that people don't really know a whole lot about or don't know how to connect with him. But now our level of consciousness has risen to a point where we are really ready to go into understanding who he is and allowing his gifts of service to this planet to move through us. He's a pretty powerful guy in my experience with him. To me, he's kind of like the grandfather of all the archangels.
So do you think of him, I guess, do you still have a belief based off of God in a sense, as Christianity describes it, or is it more of God in reference to kind of the collectiveness of all energy that, exists out there?
God for me is divine source, the unnameable, the intangible, all powerful. It's difficult for me to put a label on what I think God is because God is all. And so God, again, is just a word or a label to describe something that's indescribable.
Yeah.
So when I talk about the reference to, these are literal references from the Bible and again, from the left brain needing to explain something with words. So I just kind of do the best that I can do with the words that come to me to make the best description possible. But in reality, it's like you really can't even explain it. You can't even really know what it is. You have to feel it.
Did you ever have some experience with Metatron where you connected with him or he connected with you or whatever the case may be? And I mean, how did you come to find out about him as an archangel and all that kind of stuff?
Well, I'd always kind of known the name, but again, not really familiar with exactly who he was and what he did other than the term Metatron's cube. I had seen images of Metatron's cube. And in 2013, in January, I was planning my first retreat to Kauai. And it was a very active kind of yang masculine time for me because I was planning my first major retreat, and I was, just doing all this activity and all this planning around bringing this retreat together. And I felt a masculine presence with me. I felt something supporting me, helping me. Didn't really know what it was. Wasn't really thinking about that, but just felt super motivated. And again, I was talking to my friend Amy on the phone, and she was doing a reading for me, and she says, well, you have Metatron with you. Can you feel him? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I can feel him, but I didn't know that's who that was. So that sent me on a journey to really discover who Metatron was, what Metatron's cube was. And I went headfirst into all things Metatron at that time because his essence and his spirit just called to me so strongly to learn about geometry. And sacred geometry was pretty new to me back then as well. I knew what it was, but I'd never really stepped foot into going deeper. And the journey through getting to know Metatron and having him as a guide and learning about Metatron's cube led me to develop a couple of classes that I did to teach people about sacred geometry. And then, ultimately in September of that year, he asked me to tattoo his cube on my back. So my entire back is Metatron's cube. And all the spheres, or several of the spheres, have the elements in them, symbols for the elements or depictions. And the 3 phases of the moon at top made out of one, and the earth at the bottom. So I have this artwork via Metatron that he asked me to put on my back. And I'm like, you want me to put that on my back? That huge thing?
That's a pretty powerful tattoo, though.
Yeah, really powerful. And I'm thinking, this is where you want me to put this thing all over my back? But I just did it. And it's really beautiful. And I can send you a photograph of it if you like. It's a pretty amazing piece.
I bet. It sounds amazing.
It really wasn't until a couple years later, as I came to the island, got settled in here, started teaching a Metatron course. Again, I have a Metatron online Metatron webinar, Intro to Sacred Geometry and Metatron, and met the man who would eventually sell me his Crystal Infused Sacred Geometry clothing company called Wisdom Wear, that I started to really understood like the enormity of what he asked me to do a couple of years ago and how it was all going to start to fit together.
That's super cool.
It was a big leap of faith.
Yeah.
And trust. Because, tattoos don't go away. You got to love what was on your body. And I did. It's a really spectacular piece. But he told me at the time, and I didn't understand that I was putting a map on my back. And I didn't really know what that meant other than, I go to yoga, and I knew that people who were behind me in yoga would see Metatron's cube, and they'd see all the sacred geometry in there. And even if they didn't know what it was, because the shapes are transcendental, it would affect them. I did know that.
So let's talk about sacred geometry. If you were to give somebody kind of like a layman's explanation of what sacred geometry is, because it's so incredibly, it's if you think about geometry, just the regular geometry that you would learn in school, and then you add sacred into it, and then you take into conjunction the massive amount of energy that exists surrounding sacred geometry and trying to understand all of it, people can get really overwhelmed. So break it down in kind of layman's terms for somebody.
And it's not your father's geometry. Like if we had learned this in high school, sacred geometry, it would have been so much more interesting and would have helped us so much more than what they attempted to teach us in school. And I like to really break things down and make them simple for people, because if you can make it simple for people, then they can connect to it and maybe decide to explore it more. So sacred geometry it is comprised mainly of the 5 Platonic solids as defined by philosopher Plato. Philosopher Plato discovered or decided or defined that there were 5 shapes that comprised our physical reality. the dodecahedron, the icosahedron, the octahedron, the cube, and the tetrahedron. Most people are familiar with some of those shapes, and they all represent an element. Metatron's cube is not only comprised of the building blocks, the 5 platonic solids that create our physical reality. There is also the flower of life involved, and there is the Merkaba involved. Sacred geometry are shapes and patterns that are transcendental, meaning that they're universal, that carry a specific energetic or vibrational imprint. So, for instance, when we build a house, what shape are most of our houses?
Cube shape.
Square. A cube. Because it represents, that's the strongest foundation, 4 corners. So the cube itself is an earth element. Cube represents earth. We put our homes and structures in the earth, and we have 4 corners to provide a solid base. So every geometrical configuration has an energetic imprint that we directly apply to our everyday lives. And we don't even know it. Geometry is everywhere. It's all around us.
So give me another example besides homes.
Okay, so pyramids are always in what shape? Tetrahedron. They're in a tetrahedron. Because the ancients knew, and tetrahedron is a fire sign. The ancients knew that if they constructed their sacred structures, if they put them in a pyramid or a tetrahedron, it would amplify the energy through the element of fire up to their star families. They could draw in and send out information or energy or whatever they needed through that tip point of the tetrahedron that represented fire. So that would be another example. So the sphere, which is not one of the 5 platonic solids, but is absolutely one of our most important geometric symbols. Circles are everywhere. Our body, our arms, if you move your elbow, your joints, everything goes in a circular pattern. Time, life and nature moves in a circular form. It's round. Circles are feminine. Circles expand and contract. So the sphere, the earth is round, so they say. The moon is round. The planets are round. So the circle is another form of geometry that we have all around us that we don't really realize or understand consciously the energy that it's hold and what those formations are trying to show us. That sound good so far?
Yes, it does sound good so far.
So Metatron's cube is comprised not only of the platonic solids, it's also comprised of 13 spheres, and it's comprised of lines, like 78 lines. The circles are the feminine. The lines are the masculine. So Metatron's cube also holds the very delicate, sometimes complicated balance between the masculine and the feminine. The 13 spheres represent many things. 13 is the goddess number. 13 is the number of moon cycles that we have in a calendar year. Spheres are feminine. The 13 spheres also match up with or correlate with the 13 chakras in the human auric field. The 13th middle sphere of Metatron's cube, and I do Metatron's cube activations where I actually bring the cube down into people's auric fields. The middle sphere comes into alignment with our 13th chakra, which happens to be between the heart and the solar plexus, called the sacred chakra. 13 is the master number. Our 13th chakra, which is the sacred soul, has become more activated in all of us as we align ourselves with our purpose, as we grow in consciousness, as we expand. 13 master chakra matches with the 13th sphere of Metatron's cube. So if you think about, Jesus or the 12 disciples of Jesus, or you think about King Arthur and the Knights of Round Table, he had 12 knights. 12s are a number of completion. But what happens when you add the 13th? You bring in the master. King Arthur was the master. Jesus was the master of his 12 disciples. we are have arrived at our own spiritual mastery, our own inner guru, with the activation of that 13th sacred soul chakra. We begin to know ourselves more deeply as the Christ, as the embodiment of the Christ. We begin to know our purpose, our true power, and come deeper into our spiritual sovereignty. And sovereignty right now, and becoming our own inner guru, which is what this 1 year we're in. We're in a 1, new beginnings, but 1 is also, I'm calling this the year of the inner guru, because we are really meant this year to accelerate, I believe, into our spiritual mastery and spiritual sovereignty. Well, we have drawn a sacred circle around ourselves. We have that channel between us and the divine, and that is what we pull from, or what we draw from exclusively to guide us on our path and to help us with everything that we are attempting to do in our world. So it's not looking outside of ourselves, which we're always told not to look outside of yourself, but we do, because we do need each other. We do need other teachers and healers and other people to assist us on our path. But in this year, as we come deeper into our spiritual sovereignty, I really feel that there is going to be a quickening in the expansion and the knowing and the embodiment of single soul sovereignty, meaning that only one aspect of our being, or only one energetic force, is allowed to inhabit this vehicle, this body vehicle. And that has a direct line of communication to God, or to source, or to whatever you want to call it. How am I doing so far?
Well, you're doing very, very well. But
that was a lot. I know it was a lot of information really fast.
Yeah. I mean, and that's the beauty of it, is when it comes to not just sacred geometry or Metatron's cube or spirituality as a whole, there is so many wonderful things to kind of get lost and dive into.
Sacred geometry is it's the blueprint of God, or the thumbprint of God. Metatron takes his cube and he places it around everything he creates for God. But because we are God, we have the ability to absolutely do that as well. So when I teach people to work with sacred geometry and Metatron's cube, what you are doing is you are working with that universal life force, that thumbprint of God that is not outside of you, that it is you. It's part of you. And when you understand the geometry that's involved in Metatron's cube, and you understand the very multi-layered, just the multi-layered beauty of everything that goes into sacred geometry, the shapes are transcendental. We send and receive them between each other. Just by virtue of your seeing sacred geometry, even if you don't know what you're looking at, it will affect you and it will help you. And we can send these thoughts back and forth to each other, these transcendental transcendental thoughts that contribute to our awakening and contribute to our evolution. Because again, you're sending and receiving the thumbprint of God, which is you.
Very
Sacred
interesting.
geometry, in my opinion, is the gateway out of the matrix.
The gateway out of the matrix.
Yes.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because when we talk about the matrix, and we've talked about it before on the podcast with some other people, the whole idea and concept, and maybe you have a different understanding or a different explanation, but the idea that we're in some sort of matrix, we're in some sort of, well, give me your explanation of it. We'll start there.
Well, the well-known construct or description is that we are in what's called a matrix. It's a 3D grid of a very limited reality, 5-sensor reality, where we are, when we are, quote, in the matrix, we have a more difficult time accessing the higher realms, or our sixth sense and our higher knowledge. And our reality is through the lens of our 5 senses, and feel and very controlled. when we start to rise out of what we call the matrix and access higher realms or get to know ourselves multidimensionally, then suddenly we realize we have all these other like superpowers that we didn't realize we had when we were so connected to matrix energy. So that's kind of my simplified way of how I would explain it or how I know it.
So what do you think the matrix, like, is it a construct that was put in place by someone or something or us as a consciousness at some point in time, or what purpose does it serve?
Well, it was something that was put in place for us, but at the same time, we all agreed to be here and have it done. We all took part in that decision, I believe. It was a big experiment, just like Atlantis was a big experiment. So as we move through this experiment and this experience of being human in a contrived 3D reality and rediscover our superpowers and rediscover that we are God and that we are multidimensional, sacred geometry is a tool to meditate upon and to utilize into our lives to help affect that.
I would agree. I think it definitely helps when it comes to raising your vibration and your consciousness and your understanding of, you know, the greater grand whole of things.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how do you incorporate, because we're going to get to the point in conversation now, because I want to know all about your Crystal Infused wisdom, where I think when I found that stuff, what it was, who was it? It was Kayla McGuire that was on the podcast. I don't remember how long ago, but she gave me your information and I went and looked at all your stuff and I'm like, oh, that just seems so incredibly awesome. So tell me.
It's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool.
So, sacred geometry, when you meditate upon it or infuse it into your life, will harmonize the left and right hemispheres of your brain. The transcendental shapes actually, because you're working with, again, the thumbprint of God, move into your subconscious, they move into your energy field, and they bring harmony and balance between your brain hemispheres, as well as lift and raise your vibration. So that's kind of the quick and dirty on how I use it. Well, I meditate on it, and I draw it, and I color it, and I see and observe sacred geometry and the platonic solids everywhere in my environment. I dream sacred geometry. I mean, I literally kind of eat, sleep, and breathe sacred geometry and wisdomware these days. It moving, and I purchased the company through a man that I have been in relationship with for several months. When I met him February 22nd on the supermoon, I had a Metatron's cube tattoo, and so did he. And then I found out that he had this Crystal Infused Sacred Geometry company. So, of course, I was very intrigued by everything all about him because it was so synchronistic. And I started to sell all his clothes for him. I went on board as like a contractor for him and started selling his Crystal Infused Sacred Geometry apparel because it just really rang my bell. And I sold out all his stuff. And then one day, several months ago, he looked at me. He says, I really don't have time to do this company anymore. You obviously love it and are good at it. Why don't you buy it from me? And so I did.
Don't you love when the synchronistic aspects of the universe kind of align and then we get the opportunity to see it and it all correlates and then it leads you to this point in life? I mean, that for me is one of the really, really cool things when you can sit back and recognize
I love that. It's just been like the last few months of taking on this company, launching it back out into the world, going through a little bit of like rebranding and like really wrapping my arms around providing apparel for people that has 5 kinds of crystals crushed and micronized in the ink, and putting them into ink that goes onto sacred geometry clothing. Like, it's just mind-boggling to me how lucky I am.
What are some of the crystals that you guys use?
So right now I am using amethyst, clear quartz, rose quartz, smoky quartz, and blue topaz. Those are the ones that Joe had in place. And I literally micronize them into dust. There can be no sharp edges, no shards. It's got to be micronized dust. So there's a fair amount of time and love that goes into making that happen.
Well,
so you've got those 5 kinds of crystals that are mixed into the ink. and then they get screen printed onto various geometric forms on the clothing. I am also starting to use Andara crystals. And if you're not familiar with Andaras, they're from Mount Shasta. They are monatomic energy, obsidian glass, and you can only find them in one vein in the world, and that's in Mount Shasta. I believe that when the Lemurians left Kauai and went to Mount Shasta, that they brought them with them and they buried them there. They come in all these fabulous, beautiful colors. These colors that we don't even really have on Earth, except in these stones, the Andaras hold. And so I'm beginning to use those now in my clothing as well, which is going to enhance the Lemurian Kauai dynamic, the otherworldly star people dynamic into my clothing.
So tell me the process that you go from taking it, from a crystal down to that dust so that you can get it into the ink?
Oh, that's a big secret. That I will not share. Just know that it is done with a lot of love and a lot of intention and a lot of prayer work, because I realize what these crystals going through their process of, breaking down into dust. I realize the glory of what they are doing for people when they can actually wear geometry and wear crystals.
Yeah, I mean, it just seems amazing when I heard about it, when I started to look at it. I think it's a wonderful idea. I've never come across anything like that before. Obviously, I've seen plenty of stuff with sacred geometry and apparel and things like that, but the whole idea of infusing crystals into that, I mean, I just think it's so wonderful. Do you have plans?
It's brilliant. It's brilliant. And and the man who sold this company to me, I will forever be grateful and connected no matter what happens in our future, because I was able to take on this project that is really about helping the collective. I believe that if I get 144,000 people in my clothes, that will create a tipping point for all of us. So that's the goal, 144,000 pieces of clothing out into the world on bodies, where we create this harmonic vortex between us, because we're all connected through the geometry, we're all connected through the crystals, we're all connected through Ameera and Metatron, bringing this, this merger together to put out into the collective.
Yeah. Is there significance to the 144,000, like the number specifically?
Well, it is said that is the ascension number. 144,000 is quite well known as the number of ascension and a tipping point number. So, my feeling is if you want to be one of the 144,000, that really significantly creates a vibrational shift and tipping point on this planet, come get your shirt.
And it's
and I'll have much more than shirts soon. I'm going to have dresses and tank tops, and eventually move into a yoga wear, like a nice yoga wear line of all my clothes are organic bamboo, or organic cotton. So the quality is very, very nice. And I don't know if you've ever worn bamboo, but it's the most fantastic fabric ever. Super soft like pajamas. So high quality clothing. There will be eventually a full clothing line and athletic wear created. So no matter who you are or what you're doing, you can have your wisdom wear, you can have your geometry and your crystals on you whenever you like.
That was one of the things I was going to ask you, if you had plans to kind of expand and grow. Not only, I mean, it's good to know that you're going to expand what you offer as far as clothing line or options, but what about, do you have other crystals or other things that you're looking to incorporate and use?
I do. I think I can do some crystal themed clothing. I think I can take, just particular crystals and mix them together and put them into clothing. Like if maybe you want something that's protective. So I make you, a piece of clothing that has smoky quartz or obsidian crushed down into it. Or maybe women want something, to enhance their feminine essence. So we do some carnelian and we do some moonstone. Really, it's limitless.
Yeah, I was just sitting here thinking there's a lot of options.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely limitless. And I do know that wisdom wear will be global sooner than later. It's going to be a phenomenon.
Well, thank you so much. That's super cool. And it's wisdomware.com, right?
Wisdomware.org.
.org.
Yes.
And
you
then
can go online, and some of what I have is on there, but reaching out to me at this point, because I'm still kind of developing the website, and placing your order is going to get you results the fastest.
And so what's the easiest way for people to reach you, Ameera?
Just right through the website, or I have a page on Facebook. There's a Wisdomware public page. You can like that page and follow me and follow, the different things that I post and the shirts, and reach me through there, or go straight to the website and send me a message via the website about what you would like to order. And I ship all over the world. I am shipping all over the world now. So if you would like a shirt, it can be yours.
Well, very, very cool. Like I said, thank you so much. I absolutely enjoyed the conversation. We could probably go on for another hour and a half.
We could.
There's so much out there, right? So many things, different things to discuss and whatnot. But
well, it's so fun and fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's one of my favorite parts of doing the podcast is just getting to have these conversations and, travel down all these different paths of thought. And it's just really, really fun.
Thank you, Craig. I really enjoyed this. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to speak, and sending you all a big, big aloha from the island of Kauai, and sending you all oceans of love.
Thank you very much. And everybody go out and have a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful day.
Our reality is through the lens of our five senses. We do need other teachers and healers and other people to assist us on our path. We are all our own best healers. All lifetimes are happening at once. Sacred geometry are shapes and patterns that are transcendental, meaning that they're universal, that carry a specific energetic or vibrational imprint.